So I started learning German in first year university because my grandparents were from Austria, and even though I visited them there, they always spoke to me in English, and so it was this magical place that I wanted to understand more fully. And so I took German studies and art history at the same time for this very reason, because art history has a powerful relationship to the history of Austria as well, and Europe more generally. And so I started taking German without the intention of pursuing German studies. It just turned out I'd taken so much German at one point that I became a German major and then did my master's and went on to do my PhD, all because of the flexibility of what I can do in this field. Like I work on comics and video games and feminist theory and critical race theory, and there's so many different lenses you can bring to the cultural context and the cultural production of German-speaking Europe, as well as thinking about how Germany guides other places in the world, and we can learn so much from the ways in which Germany has done wonderful and horrible things throughout the last century even. I love teaching introductory language. That's one of my favorite things to do, because I just love seeing how it changes students. Even if the students come in already knowing a language, learning a language is different, and learning to learn a language is profound. And learning that we have to learn through mistakes is hard for students, but I think it's such a valuable life lesson that mistakes are an essential part of the learning process, and that's not something you learn in the same way in other disciplines. So I think language learning, it teaches you something about yourself, it teaches you about the cultures you were already familiar with and the languages you already knew. It expands your mind, because all of a sudden you're learning words for things that you don't have in your other languages, and it shapes your perception of the world. And so I just think I found teaching language so powerful that I just wanted to keep doing it. In German studies more broadly, it's so important that we learn from our history. And learning from the history of this place seems to be difficult for some people, but looking afar to other complex histories could be really illuminating. And I can't imagine a better place to turn our attention than Germany, where they have done, where so much has happened in over the last century, where 2 world wars essentially started. It was the Iron Curtain was raised, East versus West. All the Cold War tensions manifested in that one place. And then it came to lead migration policy in the EU, and then we saw the rise of right-wing nationalism emerging. There's just so many case studies that have come to be in Germany and in German-speaking Europe more broadly that I think we can all learn from. So it's a nice place to turn our attention to hopefully build a better future by learning from the ways in which Germany has done good and done poorly, and learned from their mistakes. It's hard for a nation to learn from their mistakes, and I think the process by which they seek to overcome the past, we can model elsewhere. I think the best thing about my job is the students and the teaching. And the teaching I get to do here, which sometimes it blows my mind that they're just like, yeah, go ahead, teach fairy tales and popular culture. They can all play video games, that's cool. Or I taught an entire board game unit in one of my other courses on global indigeneity. I just love the teaching that I'm allowed to do here and how it changes student experience. So I feel a kind of freedom to do what is meaningful to me, and I can see how it is also meaningful for my students, and I really value that. So a question I'm often asked is why comics? Because I'm a comic studies scholar by training, and first of all, no one knows that exists. So yes, you can study comics professionally. It's difficult to get a job studying comics professionally, but it brings a lot of interesting content to teaching and research. And people are always a little baffled at the fact that you can study comics. And I think comics is one of those places that really condenses a lot of what popular culture is going through at any given moment. It really takes the temperature of popular culture, and you can see a lot of the issues that are occurring on a global level being reproduced at a comics forms, and often in like a science fiction space in which negotiating human tensions is much easier when it's in a place that feels unreal. But also, I like to think about what comics bring to history and the way that comics can visualize a history that feels inaccessible. due to the overused narratives of persecution and violence that become empty. But when you put a face to it, it changes it. It also changes the audience who will read these comics. And then when you start integrating the documents of that history into those stories, these spaces become not just stories about the history, but also exhibitions of that history. And I think UBC Gardening is asking us to stop.
They're telling us to leave.
Yeah.
But that's a really amazing reason to study comics,
Yeah.
and I think that's...
And it's also just fun. Because
True.
pictures and words, and I don't like reading things without pictures. I'm an art historian.
Fair enough. I love comics. We endorse comics in this house. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a
talking to
pleasure.
us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.